Brilliant. So thank you so much for having me. I've been so excited to speak at a real life conference again. So yeah, thanks for joining. So I'm talking about satisfaction from abstraction, from individual contributor to leadership. So my name is Gwen Diagram. You can tweet me at Gwen Diagram. I am a principal engineering manager, which I didn't know that was a job title before I had it, but now I do. So yeah, and I work for a little company called Glean, which was formerly Sonocent. It's a really sweet little company. We help people take notes when they're studying. It records, they can take notes, and it's really helpful for people with like dyslexia or like ADHD and any other learning disability. So it's nice doing something nice. But yeah, I'm Gwen. I've been in tech for about 12 years now, and in more kind of hands-off roles for around 5. When there's not a pandemic on, I'm one of the organizers of the Leeds Testing Atelier, which is a one-day, twice-a-year little punk rock conference in Leeds. I usually live for travel, and I tend to bop around conferences and countries all over the world. However, I mostly just stay in this room now. So in this room, I have started a podcast with a couple of friends. It's called Tech Team Weekly. So they're called Sanj and Neil. And I do a lot of hosting online for Ministry of Testing. And I've been helping with Organize Agile on the beach a little bit as well, which has been absolutely amazing, seeing as it's one of my favorite things. So yeah, I hope you are all having the best time, because I sure would be. Outside of work stuff, I got into plants a lot over the pandemic. So yeah, my office is full of plants, makes me really happy. One of them has mushrooms growing at the moment, which makes me even happier because I love mushrooms as well. I've also gotten into video games, which I didn't know I was really into video games, but apparently now I am. And I really like indoor cycling, so spinning. Now I can go to the gym. I really enjoy cycling again, makes me very happy. So as I said, I'm a principal engineering manager at Glean, but what exactly is an engineering manager? So this differs at so many different places, but what I have found it to be is managing a small group of humans and all the kind of manager stuff that comes with it. So things like writing reviews, pastoral care, like saying, yes, approve the holiday, always approve the holiday, and shit like that. Improving processes by working with product, the engineers and senior leadership. This is one of my favorite parts. For how chaotic I am, I actually really like processes. I've never really figured out why those different sides of me work, but yeah. Improving people's lives and development by identifying training needs and organizing training as well. That's really important to me. Promoting the development team by looking for opportunities to promote it, such as tech blogs, identifying partners that you can work with. So for example, getting a blog on the CMS tools blog, for example. And yeah, little things like that, working with different companies as well. Hiring, really important, figuring out the hiring process, coaching, if you're really lucky. And my preferred way to be an engineering manager is actually getting to work on the product a bit and getting to code. Makes me very happy. Doing the usual thing of moving engineers around teams if needed, and the fun parts, negotiating timelines. But your experience of an engineering manager might be different. As I said, it's really different at different places. Sometimes they work like with just like they're kind of similar to a delivery manager. Sometimes I've heard, I don't know, I've not done that. So yeah, as I said, I've been straight up testing or coding. Sorry, I've been away from straight up testing or coding for about 5 years now. I keep getting put into leadership roles. And at first, it was a really, really hard thing to move away from. All these beautiful, lovely things that I used to get to build, well, I didn't so much anymore, which is a really big shame when you've based a lot of your self-worth on delivering quality software. Like, it was a really big part of me. And moving away from these kind of roles where you're delivering software within a team is really hard. But where you had a goal of delivering quality software before, you will have a new goal now, and you just have to figure out what it is. So my goal has always been improving quality through happiness, which is really vague. And it can be a hell of a lot of things. But as with most goals, you can break it down. And I'm not usually talking about SMART goals here. I'm talking about like ways to measure happiness and be able to actually improve these numbers over time. The thing with goals about this as well is it won't just be for your humans that you manage that you care about. Having the people that you manage happy, but the rest of engineering not, is pretty bloody pointless, as your people will be unhappy if their friends leave because they're unhappy. So how to manage happiness? So before I go any further, thanks again for coming. It's appreciated, especially when I'm working remotely. So I'm going to be talking today about how I continue to gain satisfaction out of a role that is a lot more hands-off. And a lot of people I have met and spoken to have really struggled this when they've moved away from the individual contributor kind of role, as I really have over the years. But I'm now in a place where I'm really happy and I really love the engineering management role. And yeah, if I was moved into something else like principal test engineer or whatever, I'd be happy there as well if I followed these kind of things. I'm going to be talking now about how I measure satisfaction of the engineers as a whole, and then how I also apply these measurements to myself. So I'm hoping showing people how I'm happy with where I'm going and how I've come to be happy with where I'm going will encourage people to take either some of these tips on or feel confident moving into a role away from the coal face, which is a hard thing to do. So one of my dreams has always been to have one of those things that you see at the airports, if anyone has seen one of those lately, but you get to mash the button showing how happy you were with going through security usually. Although last time I went through Leeds Bradford Airport, it was gone. So maybe they were like, you know, everyone's unhappy here, like we're really shit at security. But yeah, anyway, I always wanted one of those to put at the entrance of the building I was working at so people could push it on the way past. What I really liked about this was people could mash it as many times as they like. So if people are really mad, they're furious, they could just keep mashing that they were furious. Because, well, I doubt people would mash the happy side so much. People aren't usually like that fucking joyous at work, are they? I thought this would be a really nice way to see what the atmosphere was like at the time. So unfortunately, like due to COVID or like any other things, I've never actually gotten to do this and to test how it would work. I thought something like a Slack bot would work as well, but I've just never managed to implement it. So instead, I measure through retrospectives with a bunch of quick fire questions that I got a bit from the like Spotify health check, I think, a little bit from Accelerate, the book, and I think I've basically just made a few up as well. I'm not sure, but they're pretty standard questions that you'd want to ask a team, I think. So I'm the first person to say the retrospectives that I run are really, really dodgy. They do not follow typical retrospective guidelines of every 2 weeks. The retrospectives I run are a mix of team-based and engineering-wide based. We dig into the retrospectives as a leadership team after the team has taken all their actions and stuff like that and present it back to all of delivery, but like not showing what people have said, like the high level, like not being like, Joe said that Alex was a butthead, that like none of that kind of stuff, just really high level stuff. So yeah, some of you might be horrified by this, but I asked for feedback after every retrospective and I've molded the retrospectives around this feedback. I recommend doing this yourself. I'd recommend like not following what I do blindly is what I mean, as it probably won't work for you, just as the Spotify model works for Spotify, but not everyone else. But this works for my team at my company, which is interesting. So at the moment, my retrospectives look like this. I use Mural. I absolutely love Mural. I think it's really useful. And so, yeah, like we look at the actions from the last retro and we've got the quick fire questions, which is what I'm really interested in, what I'll be talking about today, which I'll go through them all. We do a retrospective on like the squad part, and then we do a retrospective on the delivery wide part. But yeah, that's what they look like at the moment. They won't look like that forever. This is what they originally looked like when I first started them. continuous improvement and all that. The thing that hasn't changed though, and won't change, is having the quickfire questions on there. You can see that I've changed like the questions like that I asked the squad, like keep, less, more, add, appreciate. And it was like the standard what's going well and stuff like that before. But yeah, quickfire questions always stay there. Some of the wording of the questions have changed. For example, I'm really black and white with how I think with things. So one of the questions on here is, I am never bored. So everyone is always bored sometimes. So we changed that to, I enjoy what I'm working on. Yeah, these things should probably not be so black and white. So the retro details that I mentioned. So yeah, we run them every 8 weeks, and that is from feedback from the squads. So yeah, really. So they're run by the same person for all squads. So we've got 5 squads that we run the retros for. And we do this so they can get a feel of each squad interaction. So I can say like the spiders, they seemed a bit off at the moment. Like there was a lot of tension there. Like maybe we should have a look, have a chat to them, see what's going on, for example. And I can, yeah, just see what's going on with all the teams. And then feed it back to everyone else. The squad takes actions and they deal with them themselves. The leadership takes actions as well and solves the problems like on the delivery wide level. So like around delivery meetings and stuff like that, with agreement from the team, make sure that everyone's happy with it. Retros are always anonymous, which is really easy when things are remote. Like in Mural, you can just stay anonymous. And I encourage people to be anonymous so they can be as rude or as loving as they want. And the retros run for an hour and a half. I tried running them for an hour when I first started running them, but they went over. So yeah, an hour and a half has worked quite well for us. So the 8 quickfire questions that I'll be talking about today. So communication in the squad is open and clear. I understand the goals of the squad. I like the squad atmosphere. I'm continuously learning. My opinion about implementation matters. I enjoy what I'm working on. I am comfortable asking for help, and I have enough uninterrupted time to work. So the first question, communication in the squad is open and clear. This is going to tell you a lot about the squad itself, but also about the people in the squad. Are people confused with what is happening? You'll be able to gain more about this from your regular one-to-ones. Can people clearly explain to you what they're working on, and do they know what other people in their squad are working on? Also, like, look across the rest of the retrospective as well. Is there anything coming from this that suggests communication isn't clear and open in general? What's coming out of engineering wide? Although the question that we're asking is communication in the squad is open and clear, it's important to sit back and observe this across all the squads. Is this something that's low or high across all the squads? So if this is something that is low across all, consider whether you have enough places for people to talk and that leaders stand up and speak to the rest of the team. So outside of the squad, a weekly company all hands are pretty much mandatory in my opinion, so you can hear the strategy from the top. But what about engineering or delivery wide meetings? So once a week where people can hear what other teams are up to improves understanding of the direction across the board. And here, try to encourage demos instead of updates as well. So when you go through these questions, make sure you're considering it for yourself as well. So what would you put here? Like, how do you feel communication across your team is going? So as an engineering manager, generally you'll be in a couple of different teams. So you might be in a team with the engineering managers. You might be within a squad. Maybe you're in a senior leadership team. How do you feel that communication is across all the teams that you work in? Could they be improved? So I use these questions as a way to reflect on how I could improve my lot as well. Like, and yeah, really think about things. So the next one is, I understand the goals of the squad. So this one is a really telling piece of information, I find. It tells you whether people know if they're working towards a common goal. When this score is low, it's a massive sign that someone's going to need to work with the team to define the goals of the squad. So one of the times where I put this as low was when the squad was running out of work, and I'm like, maybe we should be winding this squad up. Sometimes people are working on too many things at once and the goals haven't been communicated to them. So who actually sets these goals? When I was working with the other engineering managers on this to see how we could improve it for one of the teams and batting ideas around, I suggested maybe we could run a workshop for the team to come up with their own goals. And one of the other engineering managers said that they didn't ask to be in the squad, so they should not be setting the goals for the squad. Like, you've just put me in this squad. How would I know what the goals are? And it's something that I hadn't considered, because I'm always like, well, I'll figure out the goals and like, yeah, it's my squad. Like, I'm in the squad, so let's figure out our goals together. But some people don't like that. So depending on the team, the goals may need to come from the product manager, or if you're more like me, the squad could work out the goals with the product manager instead of them directly coming from the product manager. It's a really interesting point of view that I just hadn't considered. So work with your squad to see how they would like the goals set. When you're managing people, do you actually understand the goals? When you're managing people across multiple squads, life is easier if you have a high level understanding of the goals of all the squads. Not a really deep understanding like you would be in that squad, but an idea of where the squad is going so you can help your engineers along with that mission. Usually I manage engineers from a whole bunch of different squads, which is that's my preferred way. So yeah. But what's a step above squad goals? Squad goals are a really small part of goals. There's your own goals. One sec. Engineering wide goals, company goals, and the list goes on. How well do you understand them? Do you believe in them? If you don't know how you're going to help, if you don't believe in them, how are you going to help other people understand the goals if there's goals missing? Make sure you speak up to strengthen the goals. Like, if you're like, I'm not really sure what the goals are at this level, try and figure it out. Speak to the person who can figure it out. So the next question that we ask is, I like the squad atmosphere. So this is one of the really good reasons for the retrospectives to be anonymous. This question can tell you a hell of a lot about the squad, and if the numbers aren't high, give you something to dig deep into, like what's going on here. So I found that one of the things was stand-ups are a really sacred thing in a remote world. So interestingly, at the moment where a lot of people are still remote, stand-ups are a really important part of the day for people, and it builds a lot of the team's culture. They're really heavily weighted to build culture of teams at the moment, I found. It's important to encourage people to talk about what they want from the stand-up and different things they can try to attempt to improve it. For instance, some people really enjoy walking the board, but some others want a bit more social interaction. So it's really important to incorporate both into the stand-up. There's the people who are really into structure and the people that are more chaotic, and you need to ensure that you can meet both of their needs when the stand-up is a lot of the time the only time where people will see each other all day. So how is your atmosphere? So it's important to check what your atmosphere is like as well. With things being remote, it can be very much all work and no play. So are you putting in time to talk with your peers about things that make you happy? Or maybe pairing with someone to get an idea of what's being worked on to get a better understanding of your app? How are you feeling about everything? Because that will guide you with what you can improve as well. The next one is I am continuously learning. So one of my favorite things is opening up learning opportunities to people. So I think this question is so important. If you find a squad with a low score on this, it's possible that they're doing really standard kind of fairly boring work. So lots of refactoring of code that they know really well, or implementing similar features. And so it's important to open up opportunities to them. Even if people score really high across the board here, as part of your one-to-ones, you should continually check if there's anything that people are keen on learning. So learning styles. So it's more than like just opening up different learning opportunities as well. It's really helpful to consider like the goals that you have as an engineering team so you can guide people in what would be useful to the team for them to learn. So what I found is to have a look at the different ways that people want to learn. I've just run surveys with people, so it's helped me to figure out what the majority of people would like to focus on. So this is one of the ways that I figure out like what kind of things would people be interested in. People do not want to do instructor-led classroom training, for example. So me looking at like anything like that would be a waste of everyone's time. Online course is really popular. So if we find an online course that a couple of people would like to go on, that'd be really good. Yeah. So one of the things that we do at Glean is we run a lot of book clubs as well. So some of the things that we've read in the past are the Unicorn Project, Team Topologies, we're reading Managing Humans, and we've also read Just Enough Research because we're like, that helps us be able to build the product more. So these are great as you read a couple of chapters and meet up to discuss them each week. What I found really interesting is how different people interpret books the same thing. So Team Topologies was just so helpful in helping us write the strategy for how we wanted to grow. Like I'm sure you have heard it recommended several times at this conference, but I would really recommend it as a book to read if you're in like tech leadership. And we've just started Managing Humans, which is so packed with like great information. It's been really helpful for us when we've got greener engineering managers in the team, so we can grade them off. And in the past, I've set up engineers with other more experienced engineers to walk through a course together. So in this case, it was a course on Android automation where I set up 2 testers with 3 Android developers, and the testers spent 2 hours a week going through the coursework in work time, of course, and then met up to speak through the coursework with the developers. This is something that worked really well for everyone involved. The mentors got a lot out of sharing their knowledge, and the mentees get to learn stuff that will improve their career. It's a total win-win. So that was a previous company that I did that. At Glean, we did it with a TDD book where less experienced engineers were paired with more experienced engineers, and that was really useful as well. So what are you learning as an engineering manager? A lot of the time as an engineering manager, it will feel like you're organizing training for other people, like busting your gut, organizing training, figuring out like, you know, who are the people that want to go on this, and like buying the training, and like, yeah. And it takes a lot of time to find a course that will be suitable for a person. And yeah, just digging into like, what do you want to learn? But yeah, it will feel like you're organizing all of this, but not getting to learn much yourself. Look after yourself. Get yourself involved in some book clubs. It's like a fairly easy thing, and it's really social. Or do some courses. Learning in groups I find to be really effective, but if you want your AWS certificate, put some time in your calendar to study, and have this as mandatory time, like the same kind of priority as your one-to-ones. You don't move your one-to-ones. This is your one-to-one with you. This is improving you. So yeah, make sure that you do it and get learning. Being able to learn your craft during work time is considered a privilege, but it's how you grow a well-rounded engineering team. So one of the other questions is my opinion about implementation matters. So this is something I'm really proud of. We always score high in this part, and this is due to creating spaces where people can talk about implementation freely. So we've got a really great senior team who help engineers with implementation and ideation, but it isn't only this. We have a weekly space to talk about whatever engineers want. So this is what we call Entmoot. So a lot of discussions that are more engineering wide come up in a meeting called Entmoot, which Entmoot is a Lord of the Rings reference. Ents like trees in there. We also have Treebeard, which is the person who monitors logs. I can't watch Lord of the Rings because it's 3.5 or 4 hours, and there is no way I can stay awake for that long. So yeah, but yeah, this is called Entmoot anyway, and it's where engineers pop their topics on a board throughout the week, and we discuss the topic on a Wednesday. So this is a fairly tightly run meeting. Each topic gets 5 minutes, and if there isn't enough interest for the whole group after 5 minutes, we'll move it into a different meeting so it can continue getting discussed, especially if it's a big meaty thing. Otherwise, once the 5 minutes is up, if there's enough interest, we continue the discussion or we make a decision on what actions we want to take. There's always actions that come out of Treebeard, out of Entmoot, and taking actions is really important here, but instead of just discussing and no one doing anything. It's a great place to introduce new tooling, bring up issues with CI, or talk about PR sizes, for example. It's an optional meeting, but it's really popular. We take notes and we enter the notes from Entmoot into like an engineering announcement channel so people can easily check if they've been on holiday. Yeah, most of the engineers come to this, even though it's optional, and make your meetings so people will come even if it's optional. So your opinion probably often gets heard. Like as an engineering manager, this probably isn't so much of a problem for you. You'll probably listen to about implementation details. So instead of trying to reflect on your own views here, it's probably best to look at how you can get more opinions from different people. Entmoot's worked for me, but I'm sure there's other ideas that you can think of that gets everyone heard so you can hear more, especially from the quiet people. Like one of the things that I've really loved about remote is people who hate speaking in meetings, they can put notes on a board and it's fine. And with the retros, like you don't need to read out your note as well if you really don't want. I will ask like, okay, does anyone want to go into this more, like, or whatever? And if no one says anything, that's fine, but their opinion's still being heard. Remote's pretty cool for stuff like that. So the next one is I'm comfortable asking for help. So we're quite lucky here. So where we hired a lot of our engineers from, the culture was absolutely insane. And they were told that they had to interrupt people to ask for help, whether they were in a meeting or not. So I just have this image in my head of people having a meeting and someone being stuck on something, and they just had to barge in and they weren't allowed to apologize. They just had to say like, I'm stuck on this, I need help with something. Insanity. But it's a really strange culture, which like, yeah, they haven't continued. They all knew it was like weird. But one of the good things that's come out of that is that like the engineers are always ready to ask for help in public channels. And once a lot of people do it, more people will do it. So we've got a culture where people will ask in public channels and not be embarrassed. So for example, the other day I was struggling finding logs for a branch, and like it was a really noob question. But I was just like, hey, like I can't find this in Kibana. What am I doing wrong? And yeah, like it's totally fine. You can just ask that in a public channel and no one judges you. It's really nice. So with this question, like have a think whether you would be happy to ask silly questions in a public channel, like where to find some logs on a branch. And if not, why not? If you don't feel comfortable asking, a lot of other people won't either. So have a think about how you can change that kind of culture. It might be something that you could lead by example. So the next one is I have enough uninterrupted time to work. So this one has been the bane of my existence. I originally had this question set as I have plenty of uninterrupted time to work, and like, yeah, it had really poor scores. I think it was too binary again. I'm not sure, but yeah, so we worked to try and find the root cause of why this was low. But when we asked people in one-to-ones, like all the people that we managed said that they didn't have a problem with this. And what it ended up was all the people that were putting red or orange were all the seniors, product managers and the engineering managers or the CTO. So yeah, it was Like, it was quite funny. It's all the senior people that have this problem, or the product managers. So some of the things that we have tried, where I've tried to make this better. One of my favorite things to do is to look through the meetings that we have and delete meetings that we don't need anymore. So I always check that the meetings are still useful, and we have very few that engineers like absolutely have to go to. Like, as I said, Entmoot's optional. A few of our other ones are optional. So one of the meetings that I deleted is called Search and Destroy, where we used to look at any pieces of code or features that we could remove, which was backed by data, of course. We didn't just go deleting stuff, but yeah, it's like, I think that this might not be used anymore. Let's have a look in Amplitude and see, and yeah, and then like go for it. It ended up that we could roll this into Entmoot instead of having a separate meeting. So we searched and destroyed that meeting, and it's gone now. So an engineer's week would usually look like stand up every morning, besides Wednesday when there's a delivery meeting, Entmoot, and a company meeting on a Wednesday, and a party where we look at any tests that flaked for the week, which is also optional. So there's like 2 meetings that they have to go to besides a stand up. There's very few mandatory meetings, and we do just-in-time planning, so we don't have any reoccurring planning meetings set. Having large amounts of time where engineers can code generally creates a happy team. I always find that places where developers are really grumpy, they're usually saying, like, I don't have enough time to code. So how this relates to you, my God, having enough uninterrupted time to work is vital. So there's quite a few things I find so important here. So let's go into a few of them. So there is nothing, absolutely nothing in this world that makes me more stressed than preparing my meetings on the day of meeting. When I'm facilitating the workshop, I like to have the workshop in Mural at least a couple of days before, so I can grab feedback from people and someone else and have it shared so people can see it before. I like to have thought about my one-to-ones the day before, and I like to have added things to agendas for meetings like the day before. Getting into work for the day and constantly chasing your tail, trying to sort yourself out 10 minutes before a meeting is just so stressful. So yeah, like, try and avoid that, and don't do overtime to do it. Like, yeah, I don't organize myself the night before. I do it when I'm at work. Give yourself enough time to be prepared for the next day, and your life just gets a lot better. And if you're like, but how, I manage 16 people, this is really stressful. So I'm a really strong believer in not managing more than 6 people, to properly be able to keep track of what your engineers are doing, and not just by reading your notes from last time, but actually like remembering what they said to you in their last one-to-one. It's important to limit the amount of people that you're managing. With reviews, consider training and support. It's best to keep the amount of people you manage small so you can build better relationships and have time to do things that isn't just managing people. And like, your job is not entirely about managing people. As I've said, a lot of it is about creating a great engineering culture. And to do that, you need time to sit down, think, and strategize. You cannot be busy all the time. If this is the case, you won't have the headspace to consider the future and think about like what you want to do next, what your strategy should be next. It's so important to make time so you can plan for the future. So the quickfire questions don't tell all. So I've based a lot of this on the quickfire questions, as they're like really easy to measure and get a good feel of the pulse of the development team. You'll be learning more by speaking to the people that you manage in one-to-ones. Quickfire questions are absolutely anonymous, remember, so they give you more of a feeling of how the development team is doing in general. You also want to use these in conjunction with like what people are writing in the retros, because this will tell you a lot more. Like, it's a whole big thing. The quickfire questions are great to bring up in one-to-ones and debug when you can see something has gone wrong. A few things that I haven't mentioned. So at the start of the talk, I touched on a few things that engineering managers do. I've spoken about like a couple of these, but one thing I haven't touched on is probably my most important thing to stay sane. That is getting to actually touch the product. So why? The best way to understand a product is by using it, working on it, and understanding the deployment process. When you work on the product, you can understand what needs to be improved, especially around deployment, testing, and pain points in the code itself. Without struggling to get something deployed because the nodes in Jenkins keep getting yanked or you have flaky tests, you won't understand engineering's pain. But also, keeping your head in development is useful for yourself, whether that's like code review, pairing, developing, or testing. My favorite thing in life was deploying software. And when that gets taken away, it takes a little bit of the shine off. I love seeing software that I've worked on being used in the wild. And I'm like, yeah, I might move away someday, but I still want to like do a little bit of coding. So some weeks, like I don't get to do much, if any, and like that's absolutely fine. But usually there's like little bits that I can dip into. Maybe I can fix a couple of bugs or like test a couple of things. And it can be really useful for the team because it's not slowing the team down. Especially when the team needs a hand, you can relieve some of the pressure by picking up like little bits and pieces yourself. A generalizing specialist comes in handy, no matter what role you're working in at the time. So what else has helped me? So I'm a strong believer that managing a discipline isn't the way to go. So one person leading an entire discipline ends up isolating the discipline. So I'm traditionally a tester, and in the past, I've managed testers only. I never really wanted to, but it just ended up happening. But that ends up building a testing team. That means that testers are on a bit of an island because they're a testing team compared to development, as they will all have similar goals and views as the most experienced tester manages the team and sets these goals and views. You do not need to be the most experienced person to manage people in a discipline. So I manage like DevOps engineers, developers, managers, and data engineers. And the most important thing to me is to not have the answers, but know where to look. So, I mean, it's like development, isn't it? I mean, we don't remember everything, but we can Google it. Like, yeah, if you know where you can find the answers, it's fine. Or know the person who can find the answers. Engineering management should be more of a coaching role, not a telling role, in my opinion. You can know where to look, but not solve all the problems yourself. And like with a lot of the training, like I can't train everyone in everything, you know, that's why there's external training. Another problem with managing a discipline is that you're the expert in it. And so you don't get to learn new things from your engineers. Asking an engineer to explain more about their role to you is a two-way street. Often they love teaching you about their expertise and you learn more. It's a win for everyone. Like I used to manage some machine learning engineers, and having them explain little bits to me and seeing their faces light up, because like I was just like, I don't know anything about this. This is wild. Like it was just really good for both of us, I think. So I hope you took some things away today. The main takeaway I have for you is what you do for your team, do for yourself. It's really easy to prioritize the people you manage over yourself. So you stop learning and you run out of time to make your life enjoyable. When you improve things for your team, make sure you're giving yourself the same treatment. And yeah, that's me. Are there any questions? This is my cat.
Mysterious people behind the curtain, do we have questions?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. No, not that message. That's not to read out. Okay, so question number one. If your team is comprised of individuals who prefer different learning styles, how can you accommodate these preferences?
Yeah, so we've got, how many engineers do we have? We've got quite a few. So So we've got about 25 now, I guess. So a lot of them, there will be some crossover. And sometimes we put something on, like with the book clubs, it's like we're doing this. We're putting on coaching training as well, which is like more face-to-face training. But it's like, hey, we're running this. Would anyone be interested in this? And we take suggestions from the engineers as well. Oh, where'd you go? Oh, I need to stop sharing my slides, don't I? Sorry.
Everything's fine. Stop touching things.
Sorry.
Okay, next question. How do you get the best out of one-to-ones? I'm speeding up because we're running out of time. Unusually for you, we're actually nearly out of time. Normally you finish early.
I do. So how I get the best out of one-to-ones. So building a trusting relationship with a person is really important. So with one-to-ones, there's a couple of guides that I've used from Lara Hogan, which have been amazing. I'll post a couple of them in. I see someone nodding. But yeah, Lara Hogan's guides are better to ask from than me, I think, because Lara Hogan is a lot what I based it on.
Lara Hogan's awesome. Okay, so yes, Gwen will post links to books and other materials in the Track Remote channel and Slack afterwards. But I'm afraid we're out of time. So for now, just a massive thank you to Gwen Diagram. Thank you, Gwen.
Thank you so much for coming. Thanks for having me. Have a good day.